Hi everyone, this is Joe from Sharify 365, and in this video we're going to be looking at creating a flow from scratch with Microsoft Flows. So let's jump into the new menu and let's have a quick look at our options. So here we've got the first option is create from template, and that's looking at creating from a template in the Flows gallery. The second option is create from Visio template, and that's looking at creating a flowchart in Microsoft Visio and then importing that flowchart into Flows, and Flows will then use the flowchart to create a flow, which is a pretty cool new feature. And so then we've just got the other three options are to create a blank email. Flow, should I say. So let's start by clicking into an instant from blank, and we're going to just jump straight in with a Microsoft Flows trigger, and we're going to name our flow new file notification and create. Okay, so we don't actually want the manual trigger. I guess before I get rid of it though, I'll just explain a little bit about what it does. So a manual trigger is just basically using either a yes, no, or a date, or filling in a value, and that's coming straight through Flows. So we're not going to use that today. So we're going to delete that one. So now we've got our card search screen up, and what we're looking for is a trigger. So you do need to be aware whether you're looking for a trigger or an action, because obviously you don't want to put the wrong one in the wrong place. That will not work out too well. So yeah, we're looking for a trigger, and in this case what we're going to get our flow to do is look at a SharePoint library, and when a file is added to our SharePoint library, we want it to send a notification email. So we're going to jump into the SharePoint triggers, and the trigger we're looking for is when a file is created. Now this one here is when a file is created, properties only, and what that means is that it's only bringing the file properties, it's not bringing the actual file contents. So there's no actual copy of the file being brought across through this connector. Okay, so I'm just going to hit pause and go and double check the location, and I will be right back with you. Okay, so I've got the right library and the right site location now, so we can get started. And what we'll see here in the drop down is a list of sites within our tenant. Now if you have a particularly large tenant, you may not find the site that you're looking for in the list. So you can hit enter custom value, and then you can copy, paste, or type in any address within your tenant. But in this case we're looking for demonstration is the site that I've got, and the library we're just going to use the standard documents library in the new site. Okay, so we could also set the folder, and so that would essentially leave the rest of the library unreported on and only look for files that are added to that specific folder. So the trigger would only run when a file was added to that specific folder. So in this case we're going to leave that be, and we're going to hit new. And the next step that we're going to add in is send email. Okay, so Office 365 action. So in this case, we're adding an action, and generally Flows is pretty good. It does actually realize when you've got your trigger in, and then it usually shows you actions. However, if you were to search for something that is a trigger, it will show up. So in this case, we're going to use send an email version 2. Okay, and one of the benefits of Send an Email version 2 over the older version is that the new version has a WYSIWYG editor, whereas the old version you have to actually manually code in your HTML if you need a HTML email. So in this case we can just basically start typing, "Hi user, your file has been saved to the document library. Regards, MS Flows." Okay, so we've now written a basic email there, and as you can see, if we hit our code view, you can see that the HTML has been provided as part of the card for us and will auto complete so that we don't have to know all the HTML in order to write an email that has good spacing. Okay, so I guess one of the next things that we need to do is tell Flows who to send our email to. So what you'll notice here, when I've clicked into the email to field, Flows automatically knows that we need an email for this, and so what it's actually done is it's showed me the options that are available to me through the flow. Now what that is actually saying, if we look at that in a bit more detail, is this little grey bar is telling us which card that data is coming from. So if, for example, you had a larger flow that had multiple cards, what you may have is you may have an update action. Okay, and we need to update an item. And the item that we're looking to update is in SharePoint. So let's try doing an item update item search while we're in SharePoint. Okay, so now we can see we've got either update file properties or update item. So let's do update file properties. And as you can see, we've now got our site address. So we want demonstration and the documents library. And now what you can see is it's actually showing us the available columns that we can edit for this document library. So we could actually update the title of the file. So let's do that. Let's give our file a new title. Just for argument's sake, let's call it new file test. And we could give it a new description, and we could be very, very imaginative again, and we could go with new file test one more time, and that's all we'll do for now, because what we're trying to show here is not that we can update the file, but more that there are multiple cards, and hence when I come back here to the to address, you can now see that I've got multiple cards. So if, for example, part of this was that one of these addresses was updated, now in this case none of those addresses could be updated because they're all filled in automatically and not fields that can be edited by the user. But if, for example, it was, then you would see the case where you need to make sure that you pick the correct field from the correct card. Because if we pick the card when file is created, that's talking about the data that's pulled into the flow when the trigger is run. So that's going to have one set of data. Whereas if I've then updated that data through the update card, the data that would be in the created by email would be different. So that would be a situation where we would need to be certain which card we were using when we selected the email address to make sure that we got the updated one rather than the outdated one. So in this case, that's not exactly what we want to do. So we're going to get rid of that that update card, and we'll just delete that. Okay, so now we can jump back to our 2 and add our created by email. So what this is going to do is going to send a copy of the email notification to the user that uploaded the file. We may also, in this case, want to send a copy of the email to the author of the file. Now, that is coming from the file metadata. So if you set your metadata within your file and added your author email address, then that will be pulled from your Word doc or your Excel file, etc., and added and become available from the library. Okay, so now we can also look at making this a little bit more user friendly and useful. So we'll start by giving it a subject, and we'll start by saying file and we're looking through our list here, and we're looking for file name with extension has been added to the document library. Great. So now we've given it a subject that's actually referencing the file name of the file that's been created. And again, if we go down into our body, we can make this a bit more useful by saying hi created by display name. And as we saw here, we put in created by email and author email. So we'll also say hi to the author. So author display name. And so that will then update when the flow runs, and the email will then can say hi user ABC and user EFG. Your file has been saved to the document library. We could also go one step further, and we could give the folder path to the file, to the location where the file is stored. But one thing that may be a little bit more useful than that is to actually give a link to the item itself. So in this case, we'll put in URL, link to the item. And so then basically the user will have a link to the file saved within SharePoint that comes back to them in the email notification. And so as you can see here, for a normal file in a document library, there's quite a number of standard columns in the document library structure that we can use, but maybe we need to go a little bit further, and in order to do that we might need to add some additional columns. So to make that work, what we would need to do is go to our document library and start to add some additional columns in the library structure. That's a video for another day, but for today what we've set up is a flow that's going to wait for a trigger, and that trigger is that a file is going to be saved into the documents library within the site demonstration. When that happens, we're going to send an email to the creator of the file as well as the author. And remember, the creator is the person who uploaded the file originally to the library. And we're going to send them a nice email with some information telling them the name of the file that's been saved as well as a link to the file. And so that's all we're going to do in this flow. It's quite a simple one, but it's effective. It fills a need to notify users when a new file has been added to a specific document library. So we can now hit save, and if all is correct, that will save back to Flows, and we'll be good to go. So one thing you can do before you run your flow or perform your trigger action to make your flow run is you can run your flow through a flow checker. So if we hit the flow checker here, we'll see that there's 0 errors and 0 warnings, which is good and is obviously exactly what we would like to see. But that's not always reality, and so let's just take away our addresses here from the to field, and we'll leave that blank. And what we'll try to do now is save our flow again. And as you can see, it's coming up through the flow checker, and it's telling me that I've got some errors that I need to look at. And of course, the error being that the send email v2 card is missing the to field, which is required. So as you can see here, to field is required. So we better go back and put our email address back in. Okay, so we'll save that back in, and as you can see, that's saved successfully again. And so now we should be right to try and run our flow. So what we'll do is click back here, and you'll notice on this screen, which is just the welcome screen for the new file notification flow, that you'll see you've got your details card as well as your runs card. Now this is where all the flow history is stored. Each flow run is kept in the runs card, and so you'll be able to see not only the successful flows that have run, but also any failed or flows that are still running. So if you've got a flow that's stuck in a loop or for whatever reason cannot make it past its current card, you may find that you'll end up with a bunch of flows that are sitting in running. And so that's a good filter to check out there if you can't quite figure out why the flows aren't showing up as either failed or completed successfully. Okay, so we'll jump back here, and I'll flick over to the tab here where I've got my document library, and I'll grab a file from my Explorer, and we'll drop it in and upload the file. There we go. And once that has uploaded, we will flick over and see if our flow has run. Okay, and there we are. Okay, so now we can have a quick refresh of the page here. And we can see already that our flow has run successfully. So I'll now jump into my Outlook Online, and while that's loading up, what we can do is click back into our flow, into our successful run, and what you'll see is the scorecard for the flow, where it's actually telling us which cards we successfully completed, and in the case of a failed flow, which cards failed to complete and where the error was. So as you can see here, this is completed successfully, and we've sent our email out saying, "Hi Sherifi365," and giving our URL. So if we jump over to our email account here, we should hopefully be able to see our new flow email, our new file notification email. And there we can see our new email. Hi Sherifi365, your file has been saved to the document library with the URL. Very good. And so that's the end of today's video. We've been through creating a flow from scratch, running the flow, checking the outcome of the flow, and then seeing the reward or the email come through at the end. So that's all we're going to look at today, and hopefully next time we'll look at some more advanced flows. Thank you and have a nice day.